My name is Ijeoma Ndukwe. I'm the CEO of Bubez Food Limited, a food processing and packaging company, and our primary product is Bubez Pap. I decided to go into pap making after I had my last baby, who's 10 now. And in looking for or seeking financial independence, even though I had other businesses that I was running at the time, which I eventually found out were more expensive hobbies because I didn't understand the art and science of running a business and the numbers of running a business. So in seeking that financial independence, I thought of, okay, here I am with so much debt and lack and all of that. What next can I do? I would always give my children pap as their winning meal. It wasn't rocket science, I guess, to figure out that I could do this for other working moms. Because my sister at the time, who was living in another city, would get a woman who she felt was clean enough to produce for her family. And I thought, why not? I can be this pap woman to several other working moms. And that began my journey into Bubez Foods. For every business, you're trying to solve a problem. You're providing a solution. And the solution I was trying to provide at the time was convenience and hygiene. So convenience and health, you know, as it were, to these same customers and clients. So you can imagine that they walk in to buy their expensive shoes and bags and whatever. And I had this nice little brown cooler of pap to say to them, when you're done, I have this thing that you can buy for 600 naira a tub. I remember so well that that's what it was for me. And that little brown cooler could take 12 at once, right? And I didn't, it wasn't a mental shift. It wasn't a problem for me. I think that I'm a very authentic person. I'm a very real person and very natural as well. So it wasn't a big deal. From the time that I thought about the business, what was exciting for me at that time was the fact that it was scalable. All I could think of was, how do I sell 1 million of these products? How do I get this in the hands of 1 million people? Thinking about that, I started to seek the solution. So it had to be how we packaged, it had to be how we processed, it had to be the fact that we needed to get certified, you know, by NAFDAC and all that. And in all fairness, I wish I could tell you that I saw the potential in the local market. But for me, it was really the dream of, you know, helping the Nigerians in diaspora and Africans at large in diaspora to, you know, to satisfy that craving of a homemade meal on a homemade cuisine. That was what it was for me, and that was my vision. That became my driving force. There was no way I was going to get NAFDAC registered in my kitchen in the way that I was doing it. I had to find the way. I had to move into a bigger facility. And I remember that the first stage of scaling for me was going from my little brown cooler to a deep freezer, you know, filled with products. And from there, we put up a little structure, started to do a lot of things manually as well, but just finding the right way. I didn't know anything about manufacturing. I didn't know if there was any pap line, pap production line. It's not like saying, oh, I want to make ice cream and there's an ice cream line, or I want to make biscuit, there's a biscuit line. All I knew about pap was the very traditional way of, you know, grinding, sieving with your hands, and dewatering and all of that. So I had to go through all of that process to figure out which industry am I going to borrow equipment from to achieve what I needed to achieve. I'm sorry to disappoint you, there was no financial institution. So it's the typical family and friends kind of thing. And prior to that time, don't forget, because I was doing this other business, I had a bit of cash to play around with. I used to love jewelry. So it was me selling my jewelry every weekend at Wuse Market to raise money for whatever thing. And just taking debt, my goodness. I don't know that I can advise anybody to take my route. I was taking very expensive debt from friends and family, and just trying to make things happen. So it's not been easy convincing the financial institutions. It hasn't been an easy journey. It's getting easier now, 10 years after. But at the very beginning, all we were selling was your raw, fresh, and frozen pap, right? What that meant was that our market reach was limited. We weren't turning the kind of numbers that the financial institutions wants to see to be able to, fund your business. We didn't have those kind of numbers. I had to find a way. I had this other business also, the coaching and consulting business. So every dime and every cover I made from this other business was going right into funding Bubez Foods. That was what it was. But I focused more on building a brand. I focused more on brand integrity, product integrity. It was me saying, if we told you that it's pap, it's pap. If we say to you it's yellow corn pap, it's yellow corn pap. It was me making sure that there are no additives, there are no preservatives, there's nothing. Just making sure that the customers and the consumers could then vouch for our products and become, technically like our brand ambassadors, and then spread word of mouth. And then social media also helped in expanding our reach and the number of people who knew about the brand and the product. So that helped us a lot in the early stages. Because, the vision I said earlier was about export and the Africans in diaspora, there were all that I had in mind. How do I make this meet the standard of an exportable product? How do I take Ogi, in the way that we know it, and then export it? And I remember sometime in 2016, a few years after we started, I used the same social media and I just put out, I remember a post, and I said, buy your pap for $5 per piece. And, you were going to get it at a certain date. So I did that. People made their payments. I remember flying all the way to the US, landing in New York and going straight to the post office and mailing the products to whatever states, whatever addresses that we had. And it was the same thing with the UK, just testing the market initially. Then by the time we did the main export, as it were, we sent out a 20-foot container, a 20-foot cold supply, reefer container, all the way to Houston. The challenges were enormous. It was our first export, and we had, for our local supply, we had 9 months best before date, stamped on the product. Not necessarily because the product would go bad after 9 months, but it was just our local supply stamp date. By the time we were exporting, because it was our first time, we didn't realize that we're going to have the time lag at the ports, at everything. You can then imagine it stayed at the ports for over a month, well over a month, almost 2 months. I think about 2 months. Then it went on sea and took its own journey there as well. By the time it got to Houston, plus our production time, it got in 2 months before the best before date. It simply meant we couldn't sell. Really, we couldn't distribute in the way that we thought we could distribute. And I think that with entrepreneurship and running a business, it's resilience, it's your perspective. How do you see your challenges? Do you see them as challenges or as opportunities? I would always see everything that we go through in the business as an opportunity, and I'm looking for what's the opportunity in this. So I remember flying back to Houston at that time and saying, let's convert this seeming loss to a marketing cost. And all we did was make sure that everybody who got into the stores where we had the product got a pack of product for free as they were buying whatever product. So it became a marketing cost as opposed to a loss. I trusted our product so much. I knew that once they had it, we wouldn't have any issues convincing the buyer to then, buy the product. And that's exactly what happened. Now, this was pre-COVID, right? And then COVID came. We had to shut down for a whole year. It's a nightmare. I don't even wish my worst enemy, like ever. Because at that time also we had taken funds from individuals. And here we were, for every reason we wanted to use the money, everywhere was shut down. We managed to export at that time also with the assistance of Nigerian Export Promotion Council. They freighted the product all the way to the UK, but it got in right before the second lockdown. So it meant that from here we were paying all of those warehousing costs. My goodness, I don't know how we've survived it, but we did. After the 1 year of the COVID, we knew that we had to start over and do something again. How did we raise that funds? Because at that point also we were then in debt again, the huge debts, with people. I mean, people needed their funds and there was nothing that we couldn't do so much with what we were at the time. But the vision, the fire and the vision kept us going. We had to sell our factory, which was ours, just to raise the funds to start again. So the facility that you've come into today is leased. So we sold our facility to raise money and then moved to this one. I don't claim to know it all, but I do know that at every point in time, I'm trying to solve a problem. With our plastic tubs and the MAP technology we were using at the time, that is modified atmospheric packaging, all we were doing was take out the oxygen and introduce nitrogen as an inert gas to stop the fermentation so that we could have a longer shelf life on our fresh produce before freezing. And freezing also will stop fermentation. It's not rocket science. But the cost of the tubs were ridiculously high. And as CEO of the business, I'm sitting and all I'm thinking is, how do we make more profit? People are not buying the tubs. What they are buying is the product in the tub, right? And in thinking of how do we pack it in a cheaper way, in a more environmentally friendly way, we came up and thought that we could pack them in pouches, like what you have here right now. And that was it. So this was also pre-COVID. We started to pack the frozen products in these pouches. This was actually how the next shipment that went to the UK went to the UK. Post-COVID and pre-COVID, we had actually bought a drying equipment. We had gotten a financial institution at the time. We had a project, with a state government, a project we called a Feed a Child program, right? And the whole idea was, how do we get government to feed children with nutritious meal, one a day, and we had put this in boxes of 30. The idea was you give a family a box of 30 and the child would have a nutritious meal for each day for the month, and it was extra fortified. So on the back of that project, we approached a financial institution, one of the commercial banks, to buy the dryer for us. It took us a little while, but then we were able to whoever convinced them, looking at the numbers, looking from the project, to buy the dryer for us. And that was how we were able to make that investment. But this was just right before COVID. It meant that even though the bank had purchased this equipment for us, for 16 months, we couldn't install, we couldn't use, we couldn't repair our debts, and all of that. So, post-COVID, I'm moving to this facility and saying, let's start again, one tub at a time. Because we hadn't started packing, commercially in pouches. So for me, it was, how do we start again, packing one tub again at a time? It was just a case of go back to the very beginning. How did you start this business? And in trying to produce the one tub, because the dryer was already bought, we just called the suppliers and said, come and install. Let's even see what this thing looks like. Let's see this thing that's giving us this headache. They set it up and they needed to test run. So we had to process, it was just about 400 kg, I remember so well, just so that we could test run. We did that. And the first 2 pouches that came out, and I'll show you something on this packaging when we get there. The first 2 pouches that came out, we packed in these pouches, because this we had in stock. And I went for a meeting. And I said to a friend, I said, I keep telling you about our powdered pap. This is it. This is what it looks like. I actually paid for those first 2 pouches. So I'm not one to run the business in a way like, oh, I'm CEO, so I can do anything. No. I paid for the 2 pouches, went for that meeting. And that friend, God bless his soul, says to me, I need 100 boxes. I didn't have staff yet. I hadn't, because everybody had left. It was just me and my driver at the time, doing the renovations for this facility and all. And I'm looking at him thinking, 100 boxes. how? I don't know how. He says, I don't know, but I need 100 boxes. It was right around the Ramadan. So it was such a fantastic time to get right into market after 1 year of shutdown. And I said to him, give me 14 days from April the 1st, 14 working days. And all I needed to do was go out there, find the staff, and then run the show. I would say to any business owner, understand your business. So product development was done by me. Everything in terms of business has been done by me. And when I say by me, it's not because I didn't have the heads of units, but I'm not your, armchair CEO. I'm out, on the production floor. I understand every of our processes, everything on our flow chart I understand. And that was the beginning. And we started again. The beauty also was because there was brand integrity, there was product integrity. We didn't have the cash. Remember, we had come in to do one top again. But this first customer then paid us in advance. Because I said, listen, we're going to have to take some money in advance. And that was what helped us with our cash flow. So we now didn't have to take out debt or look for where we were going to get the money from. That was how we began business on the client's fund. Because, like I said, it was Ramadan, we then sent out proposals to all our other corporate clients and all that. And the orders started to rolling. I remember that we had to work like night shifts. You can imagine not working for 1 year, not having staff. And then your very first month in business, we had to run 2 shifts. We were working on Sundays. There were days I left the factory at 11 p.m. There was one day, I can't even forget it. I left the factory at 2 a.m. because we needed to make sure that we delivered. Because customer service is something that we are big on, exceeding customers' expectation. And that was how we started post-COVID.
Pap is a fermented cereal pudding from Nigeria, typically made from maize, sorghum, or millet. It is a cornmeal made from wet cornstarch known as akamu or ogi. Traditionally, the grains are soaked in water for up to 3 days before wet milling and sieving to remove husks. The filtered cereal is then allowed to ferment for up to 3 days until it becomes sour. It is then poured into a pap or cooked to make a creamy pudding. A study in 2018 on the nutritional composition of pap found that it is rich in essential properties including carbohydrates, vitamins A, B5, B3, B1, riboflavin, C, folic acid, potassium, chromium, selenium, zinc, phosphorus, and magnesium. It also contained high contents of amino acids. The benefits of taking pap include regulation of blood pressure and boosting the kidney's health, among others. Pap may be eaten with moi moi, akara, fried plantain, pancakes, okpa, bread, puff puff, and beans.
I don't know that there is a formula to finding the right staff. And I'll be honest. I mean, it's easy. Like I told you, I do consulting, I do all that. It's easy to say these things, right? It's easy to say this is it, this is that, this is it. But I think that the onus lies on you, the business owner, to be very clear about your vision, to be very clear on where you're going to be very clear on the kind of employee you need. Just even about 2 weeks ago, we had someone, a contract worker coming. He's very good. He had worked maybe like, say, 2-3 weeks. But I remember going on the floor and I keep, I'm talking to him about his behavior, so he's a bit loud and boisterous. And that's not the kind of environment that we want to keep. That's not our work culture, right? So even though he was productive, he was toxic to our work culture. I had to let him go. So you need to be that clear to say, what are my core values? So I look at business differently. I don't look at business just from P&L. I look at business from your dreams, from your vision, from your core values. If it's not in line with the values, no, we're not going to do it. And integrity and excellence is key. And I need to create an environment where people are looking forward to come to work to. And another thing is that when you share the vision with your staff, employees, your colleagues, whoever, whatever you want to call them, as long as they can see that this thing that we are being sold is being executed. As long as they can see your skin in the game, right? You can't please people. So this is not about people pleasing. But at least to a certain extent, they want to see that my boss is involved. I think that you would get more buy-in than that you're expecting them to do all of the work. I'm not going to come to do the menial work, yes, but I am involved, I believe. And then we have meetings where I explain to them. I mean, so pre-COVID, I let people run the show, and I'm sitting because I don't want to interfere, I don't want to micromanage, and I'm still not micromanaging. However, I make sure now that every day I explain to you what the consequences of your actions and inactions is. In manufacturing, it's about wastage, it's about your throughput. So it means that for every day you come to work, any day you don't achieve your capacity, just know that we're already running a loss. It's not until when the accountant does the P&L. So I'm coaching technically through the job. And I think that it has its impact and we're making progress with it. As a CEO, you need your numbers to run the business. It's not emotional. It's not a fancy title. So even if you don't understand numbers, because everybody doesn't have that strength or that skill set, you need to work hand in hand with your accountant or your finance person to understand what the limits are, right? So in terms of the grains and how we source our grains, maybe we're not so big yet, so we're still processing per shift about one and a half tons a day. Maybe to some people that's what we do a day. We haven't had shortages, but what I know is that with the supply, I remember that one time we couldn't get grains from Katsina to the warehouse in Ibadan that supplies us when the diesel challenges came up and the truck guys couldn't move. Yeah, but I know that with the farms, we are actually, I know, people have abandoned their farms, but we haven't had any major challenge. We have a couple of suppliers that fill in the gap as at when we need to. Example is that 2 weeks ago we needed to buy greens, and our major supplier had said to us it was going to take us 10 days to get greens. And I'm thinking, what? No, we have customer orders to fulfill. And we just called the second supplier and we got greens. So we just have different suppliers and they fill in the gap at the time. And then with your diesel cost, honestly, there's inflation in the country. There's nothing we can do about it. I'm not the Minister of Finance, neither am I the Chief Economist of the nation. What we can then manage is monitoring our diesel usage, not necessarily the cost of diesel, ensuring that we are operating maximally and efficiently so that if we need to produce 1,000 boxes a day, did we produce 1,000 boxes a day? Looking at our cost vis-a-vis just shooting up prices because there is inflation. So those are the areas, and that's why I say that is a strategic conversation where you're looking at your numbers and saying these are our thresholds. This is what we can't exceed. This is our limit. This is what can be done. If we're not producing, it means that the generator can be running. If we're not producing, it means that the contract staff are not showing up, because even the wage bill, all of those things, which are variable costs in production, will then begin to pile up, but yet you're not exactly meeting capacity. I'll be honest with you, for SMEs, I think that our biggest challenge is HR. I say so because, the kind of staff that I would love to work with me, I can't afford to pay them. So then they'll be working with the bigger organizations, right? So you have a lot of capacity gap, a bit of incompetence around the kind of people that you can hire if you then find. Because if we've said that to manage our cost is operational efficiency, it means that you need people who understand their games, who are on top of their games, who are bringing their A games to work. So you have a lot of people who are active but not as productive. So it's a lot of training, it's a lot of coaching, it's a lot of managing, from this side to just ensure that things are going the way that they would. So access to finance, I got off a call from someone who's talking about, she thought her problem was a marketing issue. And I said, no, it's a cash flow issue. It's a working capital issue. Because you need to produce, you need to buy the grains from your suppliers. You're a new business, you're a small business. You're not doing that kind of quantity yet. You're not able to get the credit lines that some of the bigger companies, you know, who have as established and can show a track record, you know, have. So it's a mixed box of different things. So from cost of doing business, so you're talking about energy cost, you're talking about access to finance, and then when you do find it, you're talking about the cost of finance, and then HR. So the multiple taxations and all that, you know, that's another kettle of fish on its own. Resilience. Resilience. I don't know how else to sugarcoat it. But that resilience has to be coming from a place of faith. That is for me. And for different people, it will be faith in different things. So for me, mine is my faith in God. Somehow, I've had those very low moments. I've had those moments where I've had anxiety attacks, like months after months after months, and it's like, my goodness, when am I going to come out of this? So for me, it was more a question of when than will I ever. I just knew somewhere that things will shift. I believed that things will shift. I just didn't know the when. It's knowing that, my goodness, I can't even believe I'm getting emotional. Yeah, because it's just God. And I can tell you something. So I told you that we just came back to produce one tub at a time. And as we sit today, it's exactly 1 year that we started again. And in that 1 year, we've done 12 times of our single best year in the last 6 years. 12 times in one single year. Doesn't make any sense, but it's happened. So it's so the way I look at it is like for every year, God gave us one year in 1 month. But I'm also not your proverbial Christianist person who is saying God is going to do all the work. I show up at work, I do my work, and I make sure that my work is excellently done. And that has helped us in the last 1 year to coast. We're not completely out of the woods. We're not completely out of the challenges, but trust me, we haven't started yet.